Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from the flight deck. We're cruising at 37,000 feet. We just passed over the coast. We'll be beginning our descent in about 30 minutes. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to America.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's session of Storytime at 9. No, I'm not in America. I'm very much here at the Bakul Library in Bhubaneswar, the images of which you just saw in the intro video. But Margaret, who is here with me today, she is from the United States and she is taking us on the journey. But before I talk about Margaret, I'll tell you why today is so special for us. The image of the library that you saw has been entirely set up through book donations of individuals, children like you, who had the books that they loved and thought that others should read the same books that they're no longer reading. But along with book donations, when people asked me, what kind of books do you want? Something that I always told them, please get us folk tales from different countries. And when anyone would travel to any country, any person who is associated with us, any well-wisher, any volunteer, we would tell them, please get us folktales from that country. Because something that we believed in from the beginning of the library is how could we use the library to promote multicultural exposure? Because as a child growing up in India, I knew mostly the rest of the world that I knew about was only about England and America. And about America also, it was a very, very narrow vision. I didn't really know about different cultures. For me, America was just one, right? So that is something that we were trying to do. And then somewhere on the way, I discovered that there is one person in this world who's actually done all that we are trying to do. And that is Margaret Read MacDonald that we have today with us. She is the person who has been collecting folktales from all parts of the world and has written over 65 books. So it's really an honor and privilege for us that finally we got to have, that's the whole idea about Storytime at 9 as well. That, every Saturday you travel to a different country. You get to know about a different culture through stories. And that is something that, we started doing 10 years back, but Margaret has been doing it for as old as she looks. So welcome, Margaret. Thank you very much for coming to Storytime at 9. And just to let you guys know, all of you know, this time we have done it a little differently in the sense that we invited questions from children in advance because we saw that a lot of you were chatting among yourselves on YouTube particularly. So right now we are going to disable the chat box on YouTube. And but a lot of you have asked questions. There have been 150 questions. We won't be able to ask all of that, but we'll try and ask as much as we can. We are very happy that today many of your teachers, your principals have also joined in today to listen to Margaret. And I'm sure all of you will have a great time. But as I said, we have already collected the questions. And when the question answer session starts, then again, we will allow you to ask questions. So don't worry about that. And then at the end of the session, again, there's a feedback form that we want you to fill up. So please do that, because if we have your contact, some of you may have seen that we have already emailed you, or we will send you by WhatsApp, whatever is coming. So it's good to be in touch. And over to you, Margaret. We'll talk later.
Okay. I think you had you had a map there showing where I'm living. Is that right? There's a map showing Seattle way on the other side of the Pacific Ocean and at the very top part of the United States. Let's see the next slide and you can see it better. You got the next, there's the US. And you can see way up there where that little red dot is, that's Washington State. I don't live in Washington, D.C. I live in Washington State, clear on the Pacific Ocean side of the U.S. and very near to Canada. I live in Seattle, Washington. And you can see on the map, you can see Oregon and California. And today there are forest fires in Oregon and California and Washington. And outside my window, it's very dark, almost like it's just, almost time for night, because there's smoke all over the sky because there's so many forests here, and the forests catch fire and they burn. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Oh, this is a picture from my summer house. When I was 6 years old, we came to a little island, and my father cut down some of these tall trees like the ones you see here. These are fir trees. And he built a little log cabin, and we spent our summers there. It's in the San Juan Islands, and there are lots of islands here, and lots of water, and lots of mountains. And we can actually see Canada from my window. If you look to the left, which you can't do in this picture, you can actually see the mountains in Canada. We're that close to Canada. Let's see the next picture. Mountains, mountains, mountains. So we have water, we have islands, and we have mountains where I live. That's Mount Baker. And we see Mount Baker from my cabin. You just look out the window and you can see Mount Baker. It's actually a volcano. It's very tall. And there are lots of little islands. You can see the little islands in front here, and you can see the mountain. Let's look at the next picture. Well, that's my grandson, Murray. He's on his beach. He lives right near where I live in Seattle. And that's him on the beach. Look how low the tide is. All the water, when it came in, it would be right up to those logs on the beach. But right now, it's low tide, and he can walk around and look at all the sea life that's on the bottom of the ocean. We like the picture. It was early in the morning, and the mist was rising. And every morning, the mist kind of comes up off the ocean, and it looks really pretty like that. Next picture. I was told to show you pictures of my family. I have two daughters. That's Julie. She lives in Seattle. And that's Matilda, my granddaughter. And that's Murray again, my grandson. And they're at the Space Needle in Seattle taking a picture. Let's look at the next picture. It's my other daughter. My second daughter, Jennifer, lives in Bangkok, Thailand. She's a teacher. And her husband there, Nat's a school librarian. And there's me with them. And that's my granddaughter, Cordelia. She's a sophomore in high school. Let's look at the next picture. Oh, that's me and my granddaughter Matilda back up on Guimas Island in the San Juan Islands. We went for a walk last weekend and took this picture by a big cedar tree in the forest. Cedar trees have very interesting bark. You can see it's kind of scaling off of there. And the first story I'm telling is about a cedar tree. So let's see the next picture, which is a whole cedar tree. There it is. The cedar trees, we have many, many of them in the Pacific Northwest where I live. And you can see how the branches curve down to the ground all around. And you can see how the bark is kind of scaly. People can actually pull the bark off. And the Native Americans who lived here, they made all the things they needed out of that cedar tree. They took the bark off and they wove it, and they made baskets, and they made clothing out of it, and mats and blankets. And then they cut up the wood, and they made boxes, and they made houses, and they made canoes. That cedar tree gave them everything they needed to live in the Pacific Northwest. Our Native American people use this tree, and they love it so much. So our first story is about a cedar tree. And if you'll come back to just me, but keep that image of the tree in your mind, how it looks. There's just me. I have a little basket, a cedar bark basket woven out of the cedar bark. And I also have a box, a cedar bark, but a cedar wood box that's made by an Upper Skagit artist. That's a bear. That's a bear. And there's the bear paw print. And I'm not sure what all these mythical creatures are, but look at all the things on that box. Well, this story is about a little girl who wove cedar baskets. This girl had trouble thinking. It was hard for her to figure things out. She couldn't understand problems, and the other children wouldn't play with her because she couldn't understand their games. One day she was sitting all by herself under a cedar tree, and the tree bent over and spoke to her. Girl, why are you by yourself? Why aren't you playing with the other children? They don't like to play with me. I can't understand their games. That's too bad, said the cedar tree. I have an idea. I could teach you how to make a cedar basket. Would you like that? I couldn't do that. I can never understand instructions. No, I can tell you what to do. No, I know I couldn't do it. It would be too hard for me. Girl, could you try? I guess I could try. Good, said the tree. That's all we need. And the tree told that girl everything to do. How to take some of the roots from the tree and prepare them. How to take some of the bark from the tree, and you can make a cut and pull up and it will just come off the tree. How to take some bark from the tree and how to prepare it, and how to weave. And she wove and she wove and she wove a little cedar basket. Good, said the tree. That's good. Now go and bring me some water in the basket. She went to the stream and she dipped it, and it was very light. And she brought it back and she showed it to the tree. Oh, the water had all run out. You didn't weave it tight enough, said the tree. You've got to weave it tighter so the water doesn't run out. Can you do it again? Again? Again. I guess so. So she took some more roots and prepared them, and took some more bark from the tree and she prepared it. And she wove and she wove and she wove another cedar basket. Good, said the tree. Now bring me some water. She went to the stream. She dipped. It was heavier this time. She held it up. It was half full of water. Well, that's better, said the tree, but it's not good enough yet. You've got to weave it again. Can you do it again? Again. I guess so. So she took some more roots and prepared them. She took some more bark from the tree and prepared it. And she wove and she wove. And this time she wove very tightly. And she wove another cedar basket. It looks good, said the tree. Now go and bring me some water. She took it to the stream and she dipped it. And it was very heavy. And she held it up. And it was full to the brim of water. Girl, you have done it. You have woven a perfect cedar basket. Now what should you do? Now what should you do? I think I should weave some more baskets and give them to all the elders in my tribe. Yes, said the tree. That's a kind thing to do. Do that. But think carefully, girl. Is there anything else you should do now that you know how to weave a cedar basket? I should teach all the girls and all the women how to weave cedar baskets. Yes, said the tree. That is exactly what you should do. And so today, because of that one girl, all the girls and all the women in the Klickitat people here in the Pacific Northwest know how to weave beautiful cedar bark baskets. And that's the story. The story was told me by an Upper Skagit elder. Her name is Vi Hilbert. And this is Vi. And she told me the story. And she told me to tell the story to many people so you can learn the story and tell it to many people and pass it on. Vi Taksabut Hilbert, an Upper Skagit elder. Well, I think we have another picture that I want to show you before the next story. Oh, look at that, the mountain. There it is. That's Mount Baker again. We saw it before, remember? I see it from my window. And look, can you see all the little islands in the front there? There's a big island that's pointy called Lummi Island. There's a little island called Hat Island. There's a part of Guimas Island. That's where I live. There's so many islands. And you know, every island had a different tribe of Native American people who lived there. There were so many different people who lived there, different tribes. And so on one island lived the people on Guimas Island. They were actually Samish Indians. And on Lummi Island lived the Lummi Indians. Each island had a different place. You can see every island had a different people, and they might speak a slightly different language, a slightly different dialect. So the next story is called Lifting the Sky. Let's see the next picture, because you can see how low the skies are in the Pacific Northwest where I live. Look at the next picture. You've got the foggy. Oh, there it is. Look how foggy it is. Look at that. Lots of mist. And oftentimes our sky is just overcast like that. We say overcast because it's just cast over with clouds, and it's very dim, and the sky is so low. That's Skagit River, where my friend Vi Hilbert lived, where she grew up. Okay, we can put the picture away and I'll tell you the story about the low sky. The story was taught to me by Vi Hilbert again, and it's called Lifting the Sky. It's told by the Upper Skagit people on the Skagit River where she lived. She heard it from her aunts and uncles. The Creator was going there, going there, going there. He had a basket full of languages. He was giving them to all the people across this broad land of America. He had a language for the Iroquois people. He had a language for the Seminole people. He had a language for the Cherokee people. He had a language for the Hopi people. He had a language for the Sioux people. He came clear across America, giving all the peoples their languages. But when he came to the Pacific Northwest, around Seattle and the Skagit River, where we live, he still had a basket full of languages. What to do with so many languages? Oh, well, I'll just dump them all out. He dumped out all the languages. Oh, everybody got a different language. On this island, they spoke one language. On this island, they spoke a different language. In this valley, they spoke one language. In this valley, they spoke a different language. No one could communicate. No one could cooperate. And in those days, the Creator had made a small mistake. He had left the sky too low. Tall people were bumping their heads on the sky. And some people were climbing into the sky country before it was even their time to go there. And that cannot be allowed. So all of the chiefs of all of the people got together and tried to think of a way to solve the problem. They thought if they only had one word that everybody understood, then they could cooperate. So they made up a word, Yah-how, and that would mean cooperate. Every chief went back to his people and taught them the word, Yah-how, cooperate. And then each chief had his people cut tall poles, tall sticks of wood to push on the sky. And everybody got a pole. And they all took their poles. If you can get a pole, you can help me push. Grab your pole and push. But you have to call, Yah-how. Can you try it? Yah-how. Yes, cooperate. And all together, everybody pushed. 1, 2, 3, go. Yah-how! Ah, the sky went up just a little bit, not enough. Do it again. Yah-how! Oh, the sky hardly moved. Everybody has to push with all your shoulders and all your voices. Try it again. Yah-how! Well, it moved a little, but still not good enough. Do you know why? In European folktales, 3 is the magic number, and we did it 3 times. But in Native American folktales in the Northwest, 4 is the magic number. So we have to do it 4 times. So one more time is the 4th time. All the shoulders, all the voices. Are you ready? Yeah-how! Yes! The sky went up where it is today. You don't have to worry. You'll never bump your head on the sky. And my friend Vi Hilbert says that shows what can happen if we all share even one word and cooperate. Well, that's the story from the Upper Skagit people. I like that story a lot. I have one more story from the Pacific Northwest Native American peoples, and this is told by the Lummi people. So let's look at the next picture because you can see Lummi Island. Well, there's Mount Baker again. Do you see Mount Baker sticking up there in the sunrise? And look, there's Lummi Island down below with those 2 humps on it. That's where the Lummi Island Native Americans live. The Lummi Island people live there. They're called the Lummi tribe, Lummi, the Lummi people. The Lummi people say that in the olden days, a long, long time ago, there was a flood. And the flood covered the entire earth. And everybody, almost everybody, was drowned. But the Lummi people knew the flood was coming. They could see it coming, and so they worked very hard. Remember the cedar tree we saw before in the picture? They cut down the biggest cedar tree they could find. And from that tree, they carved a big, big canoe. And in that canoe, and they fastened that canoe to Lummi Island by weaving a rope of cedar bark so long. And they fastened it to a big tree on Lummi Island. And then they put all the children in that canoe and one strong young man and one strong young woman. And when the floods came, that canoe floated. It floated right up above Lummi Island. All the people were drowned except for the children and the young man and woman who took care of them. It floated above Lummi Island. Can you imagine it doing that? Look at the picture. It floated way, way up to the very top of Mount Baker. See that tall mountain? And the canoe came to rest on top of Mount Baker. And when the waters went down, the children and that young couple followed the rope, that cedar bark rope that was still fastened to a tree on Lummi Island, and they went all the way down Mount Baker, down the foothills, and back to Lummi Island, where they lived and where the descendants of them live to this day, the Lummi Island people. Isn't that an interesting story? Okay, you can come back to me now. Oh, we have one more picture to talk about. Got one more picture to look at. Oh, yes. Well, until about 150 years ago, the only people who lived here in this land were Native Americans. The Lummi people, the Skagit people, all the people, Snohomish, Swinomish, all the kinds of people that lived in the Pacific Northwest. But about 150 years ago, settlers began to come from Europe, from other parts of the U.S. and from Europe. Lots of Norwegians, lots of Swedes came. And some people came and brought tulip bulbs. Where do you think they came from? Holland. And they settled here too. The Swedes and Norwegians were foresters, lumberers, and they cut down trees. They built boats and they went fishing. But the people from Holland, they built dikes to hold the sea back, and they planted tulips. And to this day, every spring, Skagit Valley is covered in beautiful, beautiful tulips. Okay, now back to me. I thought I would share a picture book that I wrote with you. This is Tough Tug. Remember I said that the people who came, some of them cut down trees and became loggers, and some built boats. And there's lots and lots of boats in our area because there's lots and lots of water. And there are a lot of tugboats. Tugboats are the boats that help guide the big ships and that help pull the barges. And my son-in-law's father used to run a tugboat company. And this is a true story that happened to a tugboat. He had the tugboat built in Anacortes, Washington, which is right where Guaymas Island is, where our summer place is. Here's the map. You can see Seattle at the bottom and Anacortes, about 100 miles north of Seattle. Tough Tug was built there. And look where Tough Tug went. Tough Tug went around Vancouver Island, up to Sitka, Alaska, past Canada, up to Alaska, and then all the way to Anchorage, Alaska, past the open sea. Well, this is the story of Tough Tug, and it's a true story. All of my books are folktales except for this one. It's a true story. Tough Tug. Written by Margaret Read MacDonald, illustrated by Rob McClurkin. He made the pictures. I like the way he made them. Weld and rivet, build a tug. Hey, workers, make me strong. Use sturdy steel so big waves can't break me. Prime and paint, paint and prime. I loved red. I am red. Don't forget my name. Tough Tug. Slide and splash, launch day. Here I come. Whee! After you build the boat, you have a special day, and you launch it, and you put it in the river, in the ocean, actually, and you hope it floats. Hooray, I'm floating. This is fun. Wait till those boats see what Tough Tug can do. Sometimes they don't float, and that's really bad. But Tough Tug floated. Forward, reverse. He's got to practice going. Forward, oops, forward, good. Forward, reverse. Now backward. No, oh, look out behind. Speed and stop, speed and stop. Hey, watch me speed. Oh no, can't stop. Oh, he has to learn how to behave. Crash. Oh, I was just practicing. Sorry. Little tugs need to know how to stop. I was just practicing. But watch what I can do. Swirl and twirl, twirl and swirl, twirl and swirl, twirl and swirl. This tug was made with a special kind of new equipment that let it go around and around and around. And the old tugboats couldn't do that. So this tug was fancy. You tugs are bigger, but you can't do this. Push and pull is what tugs do. Practice that. They weren't too impressed with his fancy new maneuvers. They couldn't do that. Push and pull, pull and push. Oh, ready, steady, steady, ready. Oh, look, barge, I'm pulling you. I'll tow you to Alaska, my first job. Being a tug is sure hard work, but not for hard, too hard for me, 'cause I'm, put my finger on him, tough tug. Chug and tug. Hey, Arctic tug. I'm going to Alaska too. Want a race? Sure, little tug. Tug and chug, tug and chug, tug and chug, tug and chug. Oh, he's racing him. Run and race and run and race and run. I can catch you, I'm tough tug. Ha! Bye-bye, little tug. Nice try. See you up in Sitka when you get there. Doot! The big tug is a lot faster and stronger. Slow and stop. Slow and stop. You beat me to Alaska, Arctic tug, but still a long, long way to Anchorage. And now we have to cross the open sea. Well, they're in Sitka, Alaska. Look at all those tall mountains in Sitka and lots of water. Looks about like it does around Seattle. I spent a summer up there once teaching Bible school to Native American children. And Huna and Cake, that was really fun. The Tlingit people there. Heave and haul, haul and heave. Oh, the open sea is rough. Waves are high. Wind is cold, but I'm not worried. I'm tough tug. Once you get out in the open sea off of Alaska, up north there, the ocean's really scary. I've never been there. I don't want to go in that kind of water. It'd be too scary. SOS, a tug in trouble. SOS, a tug in trouble. Arctic tug lost power. Engine stopped. I have to leave you, barge. I've got to help. I'll rescue Arctic tug and come right back. Don't worry. I can do this. I'm tough tug. And this really happened. Another tugboat got in trouble, and our tugboat cut its barge loose and raced over to save the other tugboat. But it was difficult. Heavy seas, heavy seas. Arctic tug, I'll pull you. I learned how. Oh, he's saving the big tug because its engine broke. It's hard to keep my course in heavy seas, but I can do it. I'm tough tug. Think he can do it? He did it. Safe and sound, safe and sound. Thanks, little tug. You told me back to port. No problem, Arctic tug. A tugboat helps its friends. Now back to pick up barge. He's waiting for a tough tug. Gotta go back and get the barge that he left floating. Splash and splash, splash and scratch and splash. Big waves, big waves. A long way back to port, barge. I know these waves are high, but tough tugs don't give up. And I'm your tug. Rock and rest, rock and rest. Good job, you earned your name, tough tug. This trip was hard, but I did not give up. I left barge safe in harbor. Now we rest. Another job tomorrow for tough tug. And that's the story of tough tug. Well, I wonder if you have any questions about Seattle or about writing books or reading books or telling folk tales. What do you think? You have a question?
Yeah, there are lots of questions. But first, the first question is, Anshu is asking, what is the meaning of tug?
Tug. That's a kind of a boat that, in English, the word tug means to pull. You tug on something, you pull it. And a tugboat is a boat that pulls things. So you see it was pulling that barge, a big barge, probably had things that were being shipped to Alaska, and it pulled the barge all the way there. And often they'll also pull big boats. When big ships come into harbor, like in Seattle, it's a very narrow harbor, and it once goes 100 miles, the ocean comes in a little inlet. And if the boat would go crunch, crunch on either side, it could break. And often they're full of oil, and the oil could get out and kill all the wildlife. So they have to have a tugboat in the front pulling it, and a tugboat behind, pushing it to make sure it stays where it's supposed to be. A tugboat tugs boats. Good question.
Yeah. So, children, I don't know if all of you understood. It was very interesting. Normally, I'm sure when you think about America, you think about people like Margaret. But the people that Margaret was talking about, they are the Native Americans, whom they call Indians there. So I remember the first time I went to the US, I said, I'm an Indian from India, not from the US, right? So for instance, we have a lot of tribals, particularly in Orissa, a lot of different tribes. Margaret mentioned many different, like the Cherokee, many names that she took, the languages of the different tribes. So in America also, they may not be as visible. When you imagine America, you may think of only people like Margaret, but there are a lot of very different tribes. The way when you think of Orissa, there are a lot of many different tribes. So one question for you is, all of you is, our email ID, contactbuckle@gmail.com. If you don't, then please make a note of it. I want you to mail us and tell us, what do you know about the tribes of Orissa or any other part of India that you are from. And if you know any folk tale from that tribe, please share with us. We would love to hear. And who knows, we'll share it with Margaret. And if Margaret likes the story, maybe we have another book there, right, Margaret?
Definitely.
Wonderful. So we would want, Margaret, has there been any Indian folktale that you have written?
Only one that I have. A couple. Well, I have some very short ones, like the story of Ganesh going around the world. I have that in one of my books. I love that story. And then I have a story about an auntie and a little sparrow who eats up all the rice water and then spits it out. It's kind of a fun story. That's in one of my books.
And when the library opens, children, you can come. I realized that the kind of images that Margaret was showing with the first book is actually there in this book. Now, this is a book to introduce the colors using Northwest Coast native art. And you can see it is so rich. The same kind of images that Margaret was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have many such books which you can discover here. But before we go on with the question answer, I love the story about the cedar tree that you talked about. And the last time I told all of you about this campaign, what we can do, the best thing we can do, on our birthday, on any occasion in which we gift people, is to gift a plant. And we can also plant a tree on our birthday. I hope, all of you plant trees on your birthdays, gift plants to your friends, family on their birthdays. We'll just see a very short half-a-minute film and then come back to the question and answer session. Right.
Wow.
So
You know, I'm
yeah.
I'm really excited to see that. You know, where I live in a community of 340 homes for people who are over 50, and we have green belts behind all our houses. And I'm the green belt committee chairman, so I have to make sure that if we cut a tree down, we plant a new tree to replace it. So I just went out last week and I had to buy 3 new trees and come back and have the gardener plant them. And now I have to go water them every day to make, because you don't just plant it, you have to water it every day too, and make sure it's going to grow for the first couple of years to make sure it lives.
Exactly. It's very important that you mentioned that. Why don't we have that picture? Yeah. Because a lot of us plant trees, but then we forget about them. We think that, that is the purpose. So for example, you see that photo, you see the left image, that was, one of the members of Bakul. On her birthday, she had planted a tree. And you see the next image on the right.
Wow.
After 1 year, it's grown. So when we plant trees or we gift trees, we should follow the progress, like the report card, what's happening with them. Let's get back. Yeah. So that's something that all of us should do. Now to the most exciting part, the question and answer session. We are going to enable comments on YouTube now, but I don't know how much time we have. We have over 200 questions already.
We'll see what we can do.
So Margaret, Srinmay is asking, by any chance, are you the owner of McDonald's, the food chain?
No way. And my name is spelled M-A-C, not M-C. So it's different. But I do eat a lot of McDonald's French fries and Big Macs, I have to admit.
So, and your middle name, Read?
Well, my name is
because you wrote a lot of books that you have this name?
No, my name is Margaret Read MacDonald. And sometimes people can guess why it could be Read. It's because my father was Murray Read and my grandpa was Parley Garfield Read. And my great grandpa was Samuel Read. So my last name was Read, R-E-A-D. So I became a librarian. And I used to go to all the schools and I'd say, I'm Miss Read, and I came to tell you to read books. But then I married Mr. McDonald. So what are you going to say? I'm Mrs. McDonald, told you to go eat hamburgers. That's not going to work. So I kept the Read in there.
Okay, good. So Shashank is asking, in fact, Sashank, Yatat, and Anushka asking, how did you learn storytelling? And what inspired you to become a storyteller?
Well, that's kind of interesting. My mother always read to me. She didn't tell me stories, but she always read to me every night, poetry and folk tales. So I love the sound of language. And in my hometown in southern Indiana, I grew up in Indiana, not India, but Indiana. And in my hometown, the people they talk a lot, and the way they often tell like true stories about going fishing and going hunting. And so I had that language in my ear. But when I went to library school, I was going to be a academic librarian and work at a university library. But the last summer I finished all my hard courses and I could take anything I wanted. And I decided to take kitty lit and storytelling and just goof off and have fun all summer. It was so much fun. Guess what? I never went back to being an academic librarian. I became a children's librarian, and children's librarians tell stories.
Unfortunately, I think the library science programs that we have in India, it's all about academic libraries, not about being children's librarians.
Oh, it's important. It's important to have training for children's librarians too. So you have people out, and also for teachers to have training in how to use books with children, so they know what the best books are and how to read them to kids. It's really, really important to have that in the curriculum. So I taught at the university for a while, and I love to teach teachers and the young librarians who are going to work with children how to tell stories and how to evaluate books and how to read books to kids and how to share them. There's nothing like hearing a good story.
Of course. Yeah. So Rachel was asking, I think in some way you've answered that, how long you've been telling stories. So is it ever since you went to library school?
1965.
Woo!
You can do the
How
math.
many years back was that?
Somebody added up.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yes, yes, yes. And there are questions from Samiksha and Anvesha about how did this name of being the grand dame of all storytellers, how did that come to be applied to you?
Some librarian wrote a review of one of my books in school library journal, and she called me the grand dame of storytelling. And then somebody picked that up, and then, well, I actually copied it on my website because it sounded good, and everybody's picked it up since then.
You know what? I didn't really know that you were called the grand dame but whatever I'd heard from people about you. So I use the local term, grandmother of all, because in India, a lot of people are not sure, who is a professional storyteller. Can there be professional storytellers? But then everyone associates storytelling as a grandmother's art, or something that a grandmother tells the grandchildren. So, as I'm sure you know, so that is why I called you the grandmother of all storytellers. And then I discovered that you're actually called the grand dame. But when you started out, were there many professional storytellers in the United States?
Oh, none when I started. No, there weren't. But a few years later, probably about 10, 15 years later, people began to tell stories professionally, and the first people began to kind of leave their careers. Some were actors, some were librarians, some were teachers, and people began to think that maybe they could make a living telling stories, and they began to leave their career and become professional storytellers. But everybody's a storyteller. You don't have to be professional. Everybody tells stories, and anybody listening should be telling stories. If you aren't telling stories, start now. Take any simple story, and you don't even work on it. Just if you have a story in your head and remember it, just tell it. You don't have to practice or anything. Just tell it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, as you said, all of us tell stories. Sometimes, much to the annoyance of our parents, we tell tall tales, but then all of us tell stories. And that brings us to our next question. Roshan and Shravali want some tips on, what are the things that you keep in mind in telling a story? And Shravali particularly wants you to say how to turn a boring story into an interesting one.
Oh my goodness. If it's a boring story, don't tell it. Why would you tell a boring story? Don't tell it. I mean, the whole point is to choose a story. Choose a story that you love. When you see the story, you've got to say immediately, whoa, the kids are going to love it. I can't wait to tell this story. I can't wait. They're going to have so much fun when they hear this story. Or it's going to be so important. They've got to hear this story. If it's boring, don't even fool with it. Look for an exciting story. Yes, that's my answer.
So, Himakant has a specific question. His son has a cochlear implant, and he is worried about how to grab the attention of his child while telling a story.
Well, if you care about the story and you care about your son, that really shouldn't be that hard. It's important that you get rid of distractions before you begin telling. I mean, if the children are all sitting facing away from you or playing a video game or looking at something else, that's not going to work. So if you want to tell a story to your son, get your son in your arms, on your lap, close to you, look into your son's eyes, and tell the story. If your son is like wandering around or you can't do it, you've got to corral the kid, hang on to him, and give him love. Love and the story go together. So you got to bring the kid close and give him the love and the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Sanidhya is asking an interesting question. Do you have the problem of stage fear while telling stories?
No, not really stage fear.
But you must have had that at the beginning, or no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you're a little nervous and you're excited. I'm more nervous about it. I can't read aloud because I'm a stutterer. So if I have to read aloud, I stutter. So that's very awkward for me. But telling stories, it doesn't seem to affect. Who knows why? It's the magic of story.
Yeah. So now there are questions about about writing. Roshan and Vidyasha want to know, when did you decide to become an author? So you were a librarian, now you were a storyteller, or did the writing part come later, or when did it? And how did you end up becoming a writer? And if you had any role models?
Well, I was a librarian for children, and I had originally had a degree in anthropology. So I knew that there was an index called the Smith Thompson Index of Multi-Things of Folklore that indexed folktales from all around the world. You could look at it under a subject, and then it would tell you where to find folktales on that subject. And I wanted that for children's books. So I decided to write one. Well, easier said than done, like 10 years later. So I realized that that could actually be a PhD dissertation. So I ended up going to Indiana University and getting a PhD in folklore and reading and indexing over 500 collections of folktales that are in this huge book. I've got one here. I'll show it to you in just a minute.
So was the PhD in the Department of Anthropology?
No, the PhD was in folklore. I had a bachelor's in anthropology, PhD in folklore. So this is the book we ended up with, the Storyteller's Source book. This is actually the second volume. And so it indexed all these stories. So that was a book that I published, right? And it took 10 years to finish it. And 10 publishers turned me down also, happens to be 1010. But in the process of having them turned down, I got to meet the publishers because I go to the library conference and meet them. And they knew me. So after this book was published, that's why I'm called the Grand Dam, because I wrote this book and it is so a basic reference tool for librarians. So then I ran into one of the publishers at a conference, the one that turned me down for that book. And she said, I couldn't do that. That was too big. But I bet you have a book in you about programs you do at the library. I can publish that. Go home and look in your closet. You probably got that all written down. And I went home and I did. And so I wrote her a book and she published that. She published 4 more books, 6 books that I published. And then another publisher, the same thing, And then finally a publisher said, oh, I'm going to do picture books. You want to do a picture book? And I said, sure. So everything just kind of grew, but all from contacts and from going to library conferences and talking to editors and publishers and getting to know them. So it's nothing magic. It's just lots and lots and lots and lots of steps, little steps.
So the big fat book happened first. And then
from that came everything. From that came everything else.
Yeah.
From that came everything else.
So for those
and lots of trying, because once I began to decide I wanted to write picture books, then I had to market them to publishers. So over the years, I've sent out over 600 rejection slips I've gotten. Because they don't want it. They look at it, no, that's not for me. That's not for me. So I just keep sending until finally they say, oh, yeah, I like that one. I'll do that one. And I start over. I have piles. Let's see, behind me, you can see, I'll show you all these piles. These are all books I've written that no one's published yet. But they won't get published sitting there. I've got to send them to a publisher or they're not going to get published. And I haven't sent anything out recently, so I'm getting kind of lazy. It's all work. Marketing is the big work. Writing is the fun part. Marketing is the big work.
Yeah. So Chopa and Grishmita were asking how many books you wrote, and Yatharth also had the same question, but then he Googled you and found out that you've written 65 books already. In addition to the books that have not been published, right?
Yes, actually, it's 66 now, and one is waiting to be published, but because of COVID, it's stopped in the water. It'll come out eventually.
Mm-hmm. And Yatharth was also asking, out of those 65 books, which is the book that you like the most?
Well, the most important one is the one I just showed you, the index of the stories, picture books. I probably like. Let's see. I put a couple aside here I could show you. Fat Cat is really fun. I like this one. And one of my more recent ones, The Boy from the Dragon Palace. It's really fun. And then I wrote a book called Peace Tales that I think is probably a very, very important book that I wrote. Folk tales on pathways to peace.
Shreyans is asking, and Shubham has also asked, which is your favorite story? So Shreyans is particularly asking, do you have a favorite Indian story?
My favorite one, the one that I tell, is the one about Ganesh going around the world and he walks around his parents. I love that to get the peach. I think that's a really fun story.
Mm-hmm. And is there any other story or favorite book which you've not written, which you really love?
A book that I didn't write that I love?
Yeah.
Well, growing up, I loved the Wizard of Oz books. You probably know them. Yeah, I was just into that magical land of Oz, and I read all of them. And and they were being actually written when I was growing up. The second author had started writing them, and the librarian would save them. And I'd come in, and the librarian would say, "Margaret, come here. I have a new book for you. It just came in," and she'd save it for me. I said, "Oh, goody, another one to read."
So Niyati, Sambudat, and Sai Shreya were actually asking about that. Your favorite books. And Jitendra is asking, have you traveled to many countries? How many countries have you traveled to?
Oh, about 80 different countries. I've told stories in about 57 or so. I've traveled a lot. It's really fun. I love traveling to tell stories and share, and also hear new stories that I can put in books. And I've been really lucky to be invited lots of places.
Is this the longest period you've not traveled?
Yes. I was supposed to be going to Australia for a conference and to tell stories in Cambodia and Korea, and of course Thailand to see my daughter. Trapped at home.
So Srinmay is asking, if you've been to Orissa, where we are from.
I have not.
And you've not been there.
I've been to Chennai and Delhi and Mumbai. Haven't been to Orissa yet.
You remember any Hindi? You know any Hindi?
No, I don't.
Maybe Namaste?
I could say Namaste, yes.
Okay. But again, the question continues. What is your impression of Indian people and culture?
Varied.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? Everything is different. It's sort of like the U.S. Every part of India is different with a different bit of a culture, different exciting things going on. So yeah, I really liked Chennai. I liked a lot. I liked the ocean there and the people. Yeah.
I think it was Gandhi who said this about India, and I want to tell the children because it's wonderful the way he put it. Everything that you hear about India is true. Everything that you hear about India is true. The opposite of everything you hear about India is also true.
I can believe it.
So it's like that. When you said varied, it's almost like that.
Yeah.
But I hope all of you understand what she meant by, when we were talking about being a professional storyteller, or she's talked about, how when she started out storytelling in 1965, it was not so much, there weren't many professional storytellers, but about 15 years later there were. What it means is people doing storytelling as a profession from which they earn their living. Like people become like your teachers, they are teaching as a profession, right? So your parents, fathers, mothers, they have their own professions, either they're doctors, engineers, teachers, working in the government, whatever. So here are professional storytellers. So some of you have heard Nupur already. In fact, the last few storytellers that you've heard, they're all professional storytellers, and the ones that are coming in the next few months also, all of them are professional storytellers. So if you love telling stories, this is something that you can think about doing. If you really like, if you work on the tips that Margaret told you today about. So let's see. We have already 1 hour down, but let's see what other. Lalita is asking, when is your birthday, Margaret?
January 21st, and I'll be 81.
And Adya is asking, how many languages do you know?
Just English, and I can communicate in Spanish. I'm not fluent, but I can tell stories in Spanish, and I can talk a mile a minute in Spanish. My grammar's very bad, but I've been traveling to Cuba and Colombia and Mexico, telling stories in Spanish, which is really fun too. I have to memorize them and practice them. They don't come easy in another language.
So Asmi is asking if your granddaughter was named after the book Matilda.
I don't know. It's possible, but I know she loves that book, and she loves the musical Matilda. Cordelia was named after Cordelia in Anne of Green Gables, because Anne of Green Gables, her best friend named her daughter Cordelia, and so she named her Cordelia.
So Ameya is asking why the mountain is called the Baker, the story that you told.
Well, I don't know. Baker is actually a family name. I'm sure originally in England, people who were bakers were called Mr. Baker. And so it's a family name. And I assume that someone named Baker named the mountain. Probably a man from England got to name the mountain. It must have a different name in the native. I don't know the native name for it. I should find out. There must be a different name, a native name. That's a good question, a very good question, because we really should be calling it by its native name, not by Baker. It's a volcano, and it actually was smoking a few years ago, but it hasn't erupted, thank goodness.
So was it like baking, like the oven?
Baker, like an oven, yeah.
Okay. So Sanvi is asking, what are your hobbies? Do you get time for hobbies other than writing, storytelling?
No, my hobbies are reading books and writing books and telling stories. And with COVID, I've got a lot of reading done because I can't go out and tell stories just like this.
Yeah. So Minati is asking, I think in some way you have answered that, but maybe a little more about how you got interested in folk tales.
Yeah, I guess.
You want to add a little more to?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess because folk tales are the most tellable things. As a librarian, I would also tell some literary stories, like by Carl Sandburg or Rudyard Kipling. Memorize the story of how the elephant got his trunk or something like that and tell it. But the folk tales are really easy to tell and fun to tell, and just kind of they stick in your mind because they're just made from the human mind. So they're all ready to go. It's like a little package of story ready to go. You just pop it in and out it comes. So folk tales I love. And that's why I went back and got a PhD in folklore and studied more and more folk tales.
Biswa Bhushan was asking where they can get the Tug book. I think you can get it on Amazon. If you search for Margaret on Amazon, you'll find links to many of her books. Not all of the books, not all the 66 books might be in print, particularly, or they may be available in India. But then if you go to Amazon, I'm sure, I did that search and you'll find a lot of her books. A lot of people are asking about how they can reach out to you. I think we have shared her website and there is a field there where you can contact her.
Yeah.
So you can go to her website and you can contact her there. Let's see what other questions we have. There is this Zenu was asking, of all the tales that you've written, which is your favorite one of them?
Of all the
books that you have written, which is your favorite one?
I think we already had that. We already answered that question.
Yeah.
But
so
probably Peace Tales would be my favorite. I didn't. I'll show you a copy of it in just a minute. These tales, World Folktales to Talk About, and then I also wrote Earth Care. Folktales about taking care of the earth, which matches your theme of planting trees. And those are probably the most important books that I've written for.
So Rajesh and Anvesha asking, what time is it in America? But just I want to tell all of you that, unlike India, America is very widespread, right? You saw that Seattle, where she stays, is on one side of America, and you have New York on the other side. So different parts of America have different, come in different time zones. So right now, what's the time, Margaret, in Seattle?
In Seattle, which is Pacific Coast time, it's 9:37 a.m. in the morning.
And in New York, what must it be now? What's the difference? An hour?
No, 3 hours.
3 hours. So can you imagine, within the same country, there's like 3 hours time difference between
4 hours, I think.
4 hours. Okay.
I don't know, this Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific time. Yeah.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you fly, you lose, as you know, the time changes.
So I think we'll take one last question that Adya is asking, and that's a very, very profound question. Why is the United States the most powerful and one of the richest countries in the world? Why does everyone want to go to the United States?
I guess because people have been working very hard for a very long time to accumulate wealth and put things together. And the educational system is very good. So people have been able to go to college and learn a lot and advance their education so they can invent things and create things.
Well, thank you very much, Margaret. It was lovely having you over. But children, before we end today, we'll be back again next Saturday with another great storyteller from her country. But you have to guess the country, and you have to mail us the country. Now, the clue is this country has so many beaches. I'm sure many of you love sea beaches. This country has so many beaches that if one would visit one new beach every day, then it will take you 27 years to visit all the beaches. So think about which country is this, and do mail us at contactbakul@gmail.com. This email ID. Tell us, give us your name and which country has so many sea beaches that if you visit a new beach every day, it'll take you 27 years to visit all the beaches. So Margaret, you're not going to prompt.
I can guess.
Okay. Right. And friends, you have the feedback form wherever you are seeing on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We would have shared a feedback form. Please give your feedback, because that allows us, we can't see you. You can see us. We can't see you. But your feedback makes us, see you in a way. and we know what you like through that. But next Saturday again, let me tell you, we will ask the questions in advance. So when we, on 15th or by 16th, you will have the link up on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, where the form will also be there, where you can ask your questions in advance, because it becomes easy, So now, because the questions were in advance, if three of you had the same question, we could still ask that. So I hope you had a great time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret. Anything you want to say to your listeners, to your young listeners before signing off?
Just keep telling stories. Find a story you love, put it in your pocket, and go tell it. And tell it many, many times to everybody you know. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. And as we sign off, there's a short 1-minute film again. Bye again.
In education, that we are trying to promote reading. As statistics say, if 50% children in grade 5 cannot read the textbook of grade 2, then what is really happening? That's because the basic skills of reading and writing is not there. So we thought that if we have to change this cynicism, then we need to demonstrate what is possible with small contributions. So that is the idea basically that Bakul is trying to demonstrate, what is possible entirely with volunteerism, entirely with small little contributions. We asked people to contribute books to set up a public library in Bhubaneswar, and a children's library was set up in Bhubaneswar, and now that children's library has become a general library, a public library with more than 20,000 books. So that is one of the major things. Another major area of intervention is environment. A lot of environmental education, but through films and through creative methods. So we have a traveling film festival on environment. We go to schools, colleges, apartments and screen films on environment, primarily on climate change and on issues of water and sanitation, two issues that we're working in. And at the libraries also, we conduct a lot of workshops on creativity. We all want the world to be a better place, and we have our own ideas of how it can be better. The thing is, can we all start in some small way towards addressing that? Can we say that in some small way, this world is the way I want it to be because I have done something about it?